Hello and good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the seventh and sadly the last in our series of online panel discussions, Conversations on Glass by Apice, which is taking place as part of the fifth edition of the Venice Glass Week, the international festival dedicated to the art of glass, which has been taking place here in Venice and Murano from the 4th to the 12th of September 2021. Sadly, as I said, today is the last day of the festival as well. So we're very grateful and happy to have you all here with us today to conclude our festival. My name's Camilla Muber and I work as the festival coordinator. The festival is organized by a committee of institutions and organizations with particular expertise in the world of glass. So Le Stanze del Vetro and the Fondazione Giorgio Cini, with the Fondazione Musei Civici di Venezia, the Istituto Veneto di Scienze, Lettere ed Arti, the Consorzio Promo Vetro Murano, and finally the Comune di Venezia. This year, as part of the festival, we've been presenting a series of daily online discussions called Conversations on Glass by Apice. Apice, as you may well know, is a leading transportation company with particular expertise in glass, transporting art, but particularly glass. These conversations have covered a variety of topics relating to the field of glass, involving speakers from Italy and abroad, with the aim of providing a platform for reflections and discussions about the world of glass. And actually, talking of the world of glass, we're also preparing for next year, which will be the 2022 United Nations International World of Glass. So we're very happy to be opening up the festival to an online audience around the world today. Today's conversation is a particularly special one, as it involves representatives of some of the most exciting exhibitions and installations and projects that have featured as part of this year's edition of the Venice Glass Week. The title of the event is Cutting Edge: Innovations and New Technologies in Glass. And we're really pleased to be joined today by a wonderful panel. First of all, we have Alan Horsley, who is lead casting technician at Berengo Studio. Here on the screen, you can see an illustration of the wonderful project that Berengo Studio, together with Wonder Glass, have presented this year for the Venice Glass Week, and indeed the Architecture Biennale, Glass to Glass, at the Berengo Studio on Murano. We also have Marzena Krzemińska-Baluch, who is PhD and Dean of the Glass Department at the Geppert Academy of Art and Design in Warsaw, Poland. We also have Agnieszka Leśniak Banasiak, who is assistant professor in the glass department at the Academy. And they, together with colleagues, have produced the most wonderful exhibition, Glass On, Let's Meet in Better Times, at the Chiesetta della Misericordia here in Venice. Then we have Sini Majuri, who is an independent glass artist, founder of FRESH Contemporary Glass from Finland, and they have organized a fantastic exhibition at Bel Air Gallery in Dorsoduro in Venice, as well as organizing demonstrations at Wave Murano Glass and Berengo Studio on Murano, together with some other lectures about Finnish glassmaking today. And finally, we have Vendulka Prchalová, independent glass artist and PhD student at the Academy of Arts, Architecture and Design in Prague, in the Czech Republic. And we're thrilled today because Vendulka is the winner of this year's Autonoma Residency Prize through her work, her installation at the Venice Glass Week Hub Under 35, which is at Palazzo Loredan, home of the Istituto Veneto di Scienze, Lettere ed Arti. And as part of that prize, Vendulka has been awarded the chance next year to go to the Pilchuck Glass School in Seattle to undertake an emerging artist residency. Congratulations to Vendulka on that award. And finally, we are really happy to have our conversation moderated by Thea Havlin. Thea is a freelance writer who's written on arts and culture for a range of publications and platforms, from The Telegraph to The Guardian, Freeze, and the Art newspaper. And she's also currently spending a lot of time on Murano in the glass world, immersed in glass as the communications assistant at Berengo Studio. So just so you know, we are streaming live today via YouTube, and we warmly welcome anybody who might have a question to pose that question through the chat function of YouTube. And at the end of the conversation, Thea would be happy to put those questions to our panelists. But before I pass over to Thea, I'd just like to introduce a representative of our sponsor Apice, Fabiano Panzironi, to say a few words. So Fabiano, if you'd like to take over for a moment.
Good afternoon, everybody. Today, it's a pleasure for me to participate at the last discussion of the Venice Glass Week, which closes a week fully of events, meetings, and opportunities for in-depth study in the world of glass. It is an honor for Apice to be able to support Venice Glass Week also in this 2021 edition. I would also like to thank my colleagues who have collaborated in recent days for the previous interesting conversation. Innovation and new technologies are also very important for Apice in the many aspects of our activities, from equipments for handling and lifting the largest and heaviest works to the new technologies and materials for the many different types of work of art and fragile materials that we find ourselves having to preserve every day with the best packing and during the transport phases. For several years, Apice has been applying 3D scans and subtractive process with the creation of 3D cells. In conversation 3 the other day, we presented the use of practical hand scanners, laser scanners, to digitally reconstruct the shape of the artifacts with incredible detail. Innovation with the use of new technologies combined with the traditional method, some in use from many years, allows us to be able to take care of the work entrusted to us in the best possible way for intercontinental shipping. The use of the best packing and transport system to offer the highest level of fully customized service it's really important. Technology research and development is therefore essential to raise more and more what is necessary for the best production and care of the glass. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fabiano. And again, I would also like to underline our thanks to Apice for supporting this whole conversation series. So yes, Thea, I will gladly hand over to you.
Fantastic. Well, I would just want to reiterate a huge thank you to Camilla, who's just been an incredible saint during this entire week at orchestrating all these amazing events, both in the real world and online. So that's been amazing. And I think I can say for everyone on this panel, it's really exciting for all of us to be here on the last day of the festival, looking towards the future of glass. You know, who knows, maybe at the next edition of the Venice Glass Week, some of the ideas that we talk about today will be in more practice and be on show. So it's really exciting. And thank you very much, Camilla, again, for thinking of me. I'm incredibly honored. So yeah, whereas other talks this week may have focused on some of the beautiful exhibitions that happen or the legacy of someone like Natalia Pietra, we are delighted that we are able to sort of draw back the curtain and talk to some of the amazing creatives who are actually working with glass and on an everyday level, exploring and experimenting and really forging forward into the future of what this incredible material can do. So thank you, everyone. And as you all know, my colleague Alan is here. I also am immersed in the world of glass, currently working in Murano. And so I feel very lucky because this week, because of the Venice Glass Week, I've also been able to see Sini from FRESH work in the studio. So again, I feel incredibly honored that she is here to talk about her work today, which is wonderful. We asked everyone to send some images of their own works and the kind of innovations that they had personally encountered. So I think first we're going to go around and everyone is going to introduce themselves and talk about who they are, what image they chose and why they chose it for this discussion today. So Alan, without further ado, if I can leave you to start talking about Murano.
All right, the whole of Murano, small topic. So there we go. Thank you, Thea, for that introduction. Thank you, Camilla, and thank you, Fabiano, and thank you to all of the other participants for taking part in this panel. I'm looking forward to hearing what you all have to say on this subject, which is something that as a technician, innovation is very, very important to me. So to clarify kind of my role and my engagement with glass, yes, I am the lead casting technician. I have sort of built up and now run and program the side of Berengo which deals with cast glass artwork, which is something that Berengo Studio has been involved with for quite a long time. But at a certain point, kind of in 2016, 2017, Adriano Berengo decided that he really saw cast glass as being a new avenue that would resonate with different artists, so it could expand the appeal of glass to new artists and new collaborators. So he really wanted to push forwards and up the quality, the quantity, reduce the failure rate, basically get good at doing cast glass. So he phoned me up one day when I was happily working in the University of Edinburgh, teaching some students how to make plaster molds and grind things nice and straight and perpendicular, and said, get on a plane, come here, make a mold, and if I think you're good enough, you can stay. And that was 5 years ago, and I'm still here. And over those 5 years, as you can see in the images, we've tackled a very broad range of work. What you see is a sculpture called Duna by Spanish artist Jan Plensa, and the poor guy's feet in the corner give you an idea of the scale of this piece. This is about 150, 160 kilos of hot cast glass. We actually make the composition for this glass ourselves in the furnace, using the expertise of people who've spent a lot of years here working on Murano in the furnaces, who understand the color chemistry and things, because to get this level of translucency with the classic glass recipes that you see, that you find around here, it wasn't possible. So we had to do some pretty interesting research and development, and eventually came up with this. It's a very challenging glass to work with, but it got us the results that the artist wanted. So we do things like this. And if Thea, we could have the next slide, please. And this is the other end of the scale. This is an example of a very small but large volume piece that we created. Here you see one of a series of 6 wine glass stems, which we cast for a collaboration project with a design studio based in Milan, Analogia project, and Maison Perrier-Jouet, a champagne maison from France, who wanted to produce a range of bespoke wine glasses. We cast over 600 of these pieces. This was another very challenging project. Going, not just making one piece once and kind of getting it okay, but making a lot. You really start to shake down the nature of the process and find where the problems are. You find where your understanding, your knowledge isn't quite deep enough, or isn't quite as deep as you thought. Lots of banging heads against brick walls, going back to the drawing board, numbers, calculators, tests, but we get results. So yes, Berengo is not a studio that produces any one kind of work. Every artist, we are led entirely by the artists and designers who come to us to collaborate. So, in the space of a week, across my workbench may be coming pieces that are 2 or 3 inches high, a few millimeters in thickness, such as the one you see here. And then we may go and have lunch, and we come back in the afternoon, and we have to make a 400 or 500 kilo mold to cast a large head or a large panel or something like that. So there's a very, very big range of work, which has presented fantastic opportunities for learning about the possibilities and the challenges and limitations of glass and the casting process. So yeah, we have a very wide range of problems to solve. And that is, as I say, a very good area to explore. We need innovation to solve these problems, but also it gives us an atmosphere where we're pushed very, very hard to find solutions, because we need to deliver. We need to make the artist and the client satisfied that their vision for their artwork has been met fully, and we haven't compromised. So we can't turn around and say, sorry, mate, can't do that with glass. We need to say yes and back it up with results. And, sometimes I manage it. So I will pass on to the next speaker. That's what we are.
Fantastic. I think it's good to reiterate exactly that often innovation is not necessarily what someone sets out to achieve, but appears on the road to find a solution to a problem sometimes. So that's wonderful, Alan, thank you. So next up, if we can do the next slide, we've got Marzena. So if you would like to take it away.
Of course, thank you very much for the invitation to take part in such a great panel. It is very nice to meet you. And so I'm going to introduce myself very shortly. So currently I am the Dean of Glass Department at the Eugeniusz Geppert Academy of Art. So it's only one glass department in Poland. So we are our school is very special. We have a MFA study program, BFA study program, and PhD study program, lots of facilities to work with. We have also a hot shop in our university. We invited a lot of visiting artists from around the globe to teach our students. So we also open, English study in glass department. That's why we can have, the students from all around the world. So this is what we try to do and be innovative. So the pictures I selected, it's my work, which was inspired by my residency in Scotland. This is the place where it's, the biggest sky in the world. That's why, I am the person who prefer to watch environment, record some sound of music or the sound of waves which are around me, instead of drawing and recreated drawing into glass. So in that picture, I wanted to show the landscape, which was around me in Scotland, and I tried to find the way and the process to just to touch the glass and try to shape, the landscape by, by the gravity. So I didn't use the mold, just I wanted to use the sheet of glass and catch the right moment to present the landscape in Scotland. We can go to the other picture. And this is another series of my work. I call it Emotion. So it's much more aggressive than the last picture. And I use the same gravity process. So I try to observe the behavior of glass during the practice. And the Emotion, the series was created, when I was doing my PhD exhibition. So maybe that's why it's more aggressive, because it was much more stressful time for me. And I wanted, to close, because I am also the person who very often geometrize, the pieces that I really like to close them in the square. And, the emotion, which is inside, it's what was in my body during, the PhD process. And I think it's all what I can say.
That's fantastic. And now on to another member of the department.
Hello, I'm very glad to be here. Buongiorno, buonasera a tutti, forse. It's great company and great place to meet with everybody. Marzena introduced just a little about our academy, about the system, how we live, how we work, what we can offer to our guests and our students, of course. And what about my work? This can be a short presentation. This is the series of my work. It's named The Geometry of Emptiness. This series is the work that reflects on the physical and symbolic existence of this phenomenon. The series is a meditative story which departs from the purely aesthetic dimension. I try to invite to reflect on the emptiness that feels that take place, but also the emptiness that always leave some traces and some shadows sometimes. Following this thought and the phenomena on the edge of reality to terms in presence. In difficult lockdown time, this subject brings me a new solution, or maybe new thinking about this, because in this situation, everybody of us was in the same situation, and the emptiness was inside of us, and emptiness was, and the emptiness leaves some traces in our life. And the next one, maybe. Thank you. The next one, this is the presentation. I think the photo is not very good quality, but the second realization is the project that tells about cubic meter. And this is also the story about emptiness, which I put in the context of the moving images. And here I try to record the images as in additional narrative layers, and it should be moved. It will be better to understand, but we have only one slide. And I think that it will be my contribution also in discussion about innovation, because here I can use also the light and the moving pictures. So this will be the short story about this project.
That's wonderful. Amazing. Should we move on to the next? I think we've got Sini. So Sini, would you like to tell us a little more about your work?
Yeah, thank you, Thea. And thank you, Camilla, so much for all of your help. The FRESH Finland team really has felt that they have been in good hands. And also, we want to thank everybody from Berengo team who have opened the doors for us. And we felt so happy to meet everybody there. And so I'm Sini Majuri. I'm a glass artist from Finland, and I founded the FRESH Finland project to showcase what the Finnish contemporary glass is today, because the contemporary artworks, they are not so well known internationally. So this is what we wanted to change. And also the project in Venice Glass Week, the heart of the project was to start working together for artists to join forces and actually do something together. So we had the exhibition in Belle Air Fine Art in Dorsoduro and the glass blowing demonstration in Berengo, as well as in Wave Studio. So the project in Venice Glass Week, it really somehow resonated to us. And this image is from my artistic work. I have been working with crowd technique for over 10 years now. I developed a method how to 3D print image, a thin layer of metal. When the metal is inside the glass, it's unorganic, so it doesn't burn away. It stays in there. And when the images are inside the glass, they are never fading away or change. They are in a way in a time capsule. So that's the idea in this technique that I like to use in my crowd pieces. And I actually had a workshop of crowd technique, 3D printed crowd technique in Ohio a few years back. And for me, it's always interesting to develop something old and make a new interpretation from it. And this is a process picture. The images have just been cased with a hot layer of glass. So when the object is cooled down, the final colors are then shown.
I think we have a picture of that, I believe. Yes, so another example.
And actually, feminine figures are important in my artistic work because I have a background in fashion design, and I'm interested in a way that woman has been shown in the culture, and how the glass medium changes the perspective. Because glass, it has the optical layers of it. It has the shadow, and the shadow is also part of the piece. Also, it has the distortions, the reflections that no other medium has. And
I also have to say I'm so delighted that we have so many women on this panel, which is a really lovely thing, which leads me on to our last, but by no means least, speaker today, who is Vendulka. Vendulka, would you like to talk a little about your work, which is from very recently award-winning, thanks to the Venice last week.
So hello. So I think that I'm going to be the next one in the row to say thanks to everybody, especially to Camilla, to lend me her office to actually get a part in this conversation. So about me, actually I'm a PhD student. I'm on Academy of Art, Architecture and Design in Prague. I'm currently not doing anything else except my art practice and combined with that. So my main focus on kiln casting, but there is kind of like two different focuses in my work, and one you can see on the pictures. What is focused on kiln casting, what is also the topic of my PhD. Thank you. And the other one is more about installation or like time-based installation, also sometimes in public space, sometimes not. About this work, this is actually one of the series from the works you can also see here in Venice, the awarded ones. It's called směsi, mixtures. What is actually referring to is those mixtures supposed to be those mixtures for the investments for the kiln casting. What is actually the topic of my PhD. So my work is mostly the PhD work, and the biggest part of my work now is actually focusing on refractory materials. So I'm happy to meet you, Ellen, because that's every time nice to meet someone who actually is interested in the same thing. But so basically now in the moment I'm developing a new investment material for mold making for kiln cast glass. And also I work quite a lot with 3D printing. I think then we can move on to another picture, because it's actually refers to the exhibition, what was actually presenting some of like a semi, like, you know, like the middle part of the research 2019. So this is it. So I'm working with film casting and 3D printing, and I think that's it.
And innovation is always a crucial part. It's incredible. So yes, I think we now move on, because we also asked you to send pictures of innovations that you were particularly excited by, whether in your own work or the work of someone else. And so, yes, I think Alan has for us now some exciting images from, you know, within the casting studio. So Alan, if you'd like to explain what you chose with regard to kind of exciting innovations that are getting you excited for the future of glass, that would be wonderful.
Okay, well, this first image is basically because I bought myself a 3D printer as a Christmas present, and I want to convince myself I didn't spend 800 euros on a toy. So now I use it for work. But no, joking aside, like, although 3D printing is perhaps not exactly, certainly FDM printing, which is what this is not exactly at the bleeding edge of technological innovation anymore. It's something which I think represents a very useful raft of processes that are just becoming an accepted and accessible part of your workshop toolkit nowadays. What this particular part on screen is basically just the gate and sprue system to get glass into another casting. This isn't a work of art. This is a utilitarian part of the system of getting material into a mold to cast the piece, hopefully in a way which minimizes turbulence of the material, so we have fewer bubbles. It allows like better cooling of, basically this is utilitarian, okay? But to have a person kind of sit there and build this out of clay, of course it's possible, but it takes time, whereas this can be this or other components like it, which represent the bulk of what I do in kind of my workshop in terms of 3D printing. This can be designed very, very quickly and very accurately on the computer in CAD, and then the robot does the work while I go away and do something else, which means, we can become more efficient, and we can get precise components that are made to fit. This also allows us to avoid doing too much physical work on top of some models, which may be very fragile, delicate, highly valuable. We perhaps don't want to touch them. And the next progression from this would ideally be moving on and having 3D scanning facilities here as well. It's not something we have at the moment. We do collaborate with external partners sometimes when we have to scan objects. We did a project for Jan Fabre several years ago where he had an edition of bronze pieces that were a certain size, and the goal was to enlarge them drastically and cast them in glass, and we were able to do that through partnering with some external facilitators. Did a very good scan, sent us a model divided into parts as we needed, ready to print it, and we didn't have to physically go anywhere near this very delicate, unique work in bronze, so we were able to minimize our risk. But yeah, we do a lot of this utilitarian stuff, and I'd like to do it more so we can free ourselves up as technicians to do the other work that really needs it needs to be human hands-on.
Yes. So it's about prioritizing what the machines can do and what you can kind of leave, and then making sure there's the human touch.
And just having the level of accuracy where you need it, getting things that are the right shape, right proportions, things like that. And then if we move on to the second image that we have, we do little things. We do some things that are a bit bigger. What this is quite a large mold. I think this is about 600 kilos with the metal frame and things. It's incredibly heavy and awkward to transport. And these molds are milled directly into the refracting material. We don't use wax. We don't have a removable pattern. This project, I can't really go into too much detail about the client or what this is. But suffice to say, this is a very large cast glass work in multiple sections with kind of relief inside it. And we were sort of looking at this project at the design stage, and we were thinking this is a hell of a lot of man hours that would be going into creating the original models, the original patterns, molding them to produce the waxes. Then you have dimensional problems as well, because every material expands or contracts or does something. And when you multiply those very small changes over the number of pieces which we have to produce for this project, it would give us an unacceptable variation between one piece and another. So we looked around, and we basically, this isn't a new process, CNC milling machines, they're out there. There are big ones. There are ones that would eat the machine that did this for breakfast that you can buy on the market.
What is CNC?
A computer numerically controlled. It's basically a router that is on an arm that follows a track which comes from a 3D model or a set of vectors that are on the computer. So we worked with a designer to produce a 3D model of these components, and that data was then fed into a milling machine, which we placed this large block of refractory material underneath, and the milling machine carves away. So it basically creates our mold in a single step. And this presented, it sounds simple. Give the robot some numbers, it does its job, we all go home. The reality is, kind of working in this way presents a lot of unexpected challenges. We couldn't build a mold with the same type of refractory that we normally do, because we needed to have the entire area where the machine was going to excavate have the same consistency that we would normally use only for a face coat on a mold. So where we might normally build a mold by hand in layers, nice, very, very high quality refractory material on the surface, and then backed up with reinforcing coats full of all sorts of things that you don't really want touching your glass. We couldn't use that method here. And so we had to reconfigure our recipes for the refractory. We had to use different additives to allow us to work with this much material in the space of time we had before these things set in the bucket, kind of thing. And then just logistically, you know, this project here was the driving force behind a lot of expansion that we did in terms of machinery and and so it provoked, as I said earlier on. We have a big range of things that we do, so each project pushes us in a different direction, and overall it's always, hopefully it's always growth. We never get pushed backwards by the projects. It can feel like it sometimes, but you know, this
you're being forced to innovate. That's wonderful.
To solve a problem, and that's why, because my role specifically, but in general my team of technicians, some of us do have our own artistic practice in glass, and within that practice we each pursue our own goals and our own things. But you know, we're driven by the motivator for us is realizing other artists' projects, and so like the level of subtlety and research into something like slumping that Marzena's doing, that's fantastic. You know, you're gaining there this incredibly deep, rich knowledge of all the subtle factors that are going on within the motion of this material, and so we can learn a hell of a lot from artists who just dive really, really deeply into a specific thing, and having each artist come, some of whom have no background in glass as well, but have a deep understanding of maybe bronze or ceramics or textiles. They bring a new set of ideas and a new set of very specific requirements that we then have to drive our own understanding of glass up to meet.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you, Alan. And now, speaking of artists, we'd move on, I think, to some examples of some contemporary art by artists working with glass. And I think this is the work of Agata. I think it was Marzena is going to tell us about this.
Not me, Agnieszka.
So we try to explain just a little about our decision, because we prepared two projects. We prepared two pictures of the project of our students. In this year, they passed exams.
They already graduated the MFA program.
Yes. And the first pictures show us the work of Agata Garbacz. She's a young artist, and she decided to explore really old technique, like we know, but the verb. Oh, one before. Okay, yes. But what is interesting, what is innovation, I think, that these elements was made together in one form, and the other things is about this, that inside of this shape, the shapes is inside empty. So, like you know, the Padever is a difficult technique, but in this situation, it was everything melted in one form. So, the problem of realization, the technology problem was in a high level. And of course, here we have some presentation with the light, because it's something like about moving elements. And this light made this more three-dimensional, I think.
So to reiterate, so this piece was made in one piece?
In one form, one mold.
One mold, wow! Which is incredible, because it looks as if it's lots of little bits kind of all fit together. That's incredible.
I think so. It's in this moment should be a secret, because I don't know very well. I saw a few times, I was looking for the process, and I say, Agata, how do you make this? It's really, really fantastic to look at this process.
And texture as well. It's really beautiful, and that's all created by the mold. So even the surface texture.
Yes, but she started to make the elements with the wax. I think.
Yeah, the beginning was the wax, but then she moved into different materials, and she started to use sand and fiberglass, to keep the shape during the firing. But even to find the right techniques, she also needed to check the temperature. So she made lots of tests, to create such an object.
Of course, I feel behind every innovation there must be, it's like the light. How many times can you create the light bulb? Yeah, like for every innovation there are hundreds that go wrong, and it's the people who persist. I think that is the key. Well, behind innovation there is persistence and determination to solve that problem, to create what you want to create. That's amazing. And the next example, we have another very young artist, which is again very exciting.
Okay, so this is Emilia Marcia's pieces. She's the second person who already graduated our MFA program, and this is her diploma project. And this is the project which was connected with the functional glass, because we have two different fields of study, like functional glass and art glass. And the students needed to make a diploma from both of those, subjects. So she wanted to create the functional pieces, but in different ways. So she's a great flame worker. She's doing everything by herself, and it's very big size of object, maybe 1 meter high and wide, 1 meter. And she wanted to design these pieces for a special food design. So she wanted to connect, the glass with the food design, that the people, can play with the object as well as the food and try different kind of taste. So it was her idea, and she's incredibly good flame worker.
And when you say flame working, for the audience members who don't know, that means when you've got the small little torch and you're literally sort of there crafting. So it's incredibly intricate and incredibly delicate, as you can see by these incredibly lifelike sculptures, which is just fantastic. And so then the outer frame, is that also lamp worked?
No. I think that she put it on the special table which she designed. So it was like a round black table, and it was like a it
was covered,
It's very, very big.
But just incredible. And again, an example of kind of combining different styles of glass working and really thinking kind of outside the box. Wow, amazing. Thank you so much. Okay, so now moving on to Sini.
Sini. We would like to show something more, but the time is really short.
Yes, no, exactly. Everyone has so much to say, but we've got to keep the pace going. But Sini, I know you've chosen some of your fellow artists from FRESH Finland, which is wonderful. Yes. Because, again, I feel very lucky. I got to see some of them working when they came to Berengo to do their demonstration, thanks to the Venice Glass Week. So please, who have you chosen? Tell us more.
Here you can see a work by Finnish glass artist Maria Hepoaho. She works in Riihimäki and she owns her own studio, Mafka Alakoski. And Maria, she has been working with a combination of blown glass and natural stone. This is her speciality, and I chose her work here because it resonates how the artist, when the artists are starting to dig deep into one theme, they become masters of it. And this piece also tells about the nature of glass. When you think about glass, it's kind of like one of these key technologies that the modern science has actually evolved from. You needed to have the eyeglasses, you needed to have the microscope lenses and the telescope lenses to see very close in the microscopic world, but in the same time in the universe, in very far away. So the glass medium, it has these deeper levels in there. But the most important level in the artistic work is the mystery, because you need to respect the medium. You're never going to learn everything, everything about it. And I think Maria's work, it also somehow resonated to one Finnish innovation about glass, quite recent actually. There is Erkka Frankberg from Tampere University, and he developed a glass that is in room temperature, it stretches. So somehow when I see Maria's work, there is something similar into this innovation of a glass that actually flows in a room temperature, and that's made out of aluminum oxide. So in science, glass is always been processed, and something new is always going to come up. But also when you work as an artist, you never learn everything.
It's very true, very true. Beautiful. And did you have another example? I think you did.
Yes.
Yes.
This is Camilla Muber, also one artist from the FRESH Finland project. Camilla, she makes her works in Nuutajärvi glass village, and that is the oldest place in Finland where the glass has been made. And it has a long history, and her works, she approaches the material as a messenger. Her sculptures are titled that they are messengers in glass. So she hopes to communicate about the environment and also about humanity. So I think that when the artist is working with glass, the innovation can also be about not only in the technique, but also in the expression. And she mixes this natural stone formations, light and glass.
It's beautiful. It really is just incredible. And again, thinking about the ways of potentially combining different materials and thinking about different ways in which to approach glass. I know, at least for me and Alan at Berengo, that's one of the fundamental points of the studio, is to think about glass in a different way and to think about it as any other material for sculpture. And I think for innovation, that's incredibly useful, because when you stop thinking about the limits potentially and you just try to think what you want to try and achieve and then try and find the route to that, that's definitely a way forward. So now I think I'm going to pass on over to Camilla for a second.
Yes, I'd just like to, well, first of all, thank you all so much for your contributions so far, but I'd also like to apologise to Vendulka because I didn't give her enough time to share photographs at this stage. So I'm sure that we can gladly hear from Vendulka without having any images to illustrate. But again, thank you, Vendulka, for participating without the possibility of images.
Could we go back to the image of Vendulka's work, perhaps, while she talks? Because Vendulka, if you want to simply tell us a little about potentially some more of your work from your PhD, I think that would also be incredibly interesting for everyone here. As you were saying, especially Alan, with regards to working out the kind of minute details of these processes, because something like mold making, from the outset is potentially something we've been doing for hundreds of years, and yet what you're doing in your PhD is bringing a new element
happening here. Can you help me, please? There's I lost the image somehow. I don't know what to do. I'm sorry for that. Something happening.
We will, there we go.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you a lot. Now it works. So, okay, let's do it again like that. I'm sorry for this a little bit.
No, not at all.
But, for a start, I think then there was this huge boom of the 3D printing. I would like to say on the start that it's actually not a new technology. And it was developed, I think, in the 70s. But it's just, like, then it's got certain attention in this time. But anyway, I think that the reason why is that it's kind of like everybody can reach it now with Prusa and all those companies who's actually selling the super cheap, high quality 3D printers. Okay, not really the SLA or, the higher technologies, but the basic ones. But everybody can afford it. It does become a small miracle. I think that especially the CNCs and the 3D printing machines, they're actually completely changed the paradigm of the industry. Like, because, before those technologies, there was like no option to produce a small series because you have to and I'm not talking about glass, I'm maybe talking about design in general, because, if you want to do something in a kind of like small series before, you need to make the models, all the molds were like incredibly expensive to go industrial. And now you have this moment of like home prototyping. And then you have a machine what can actually produce any kind of product. Like without, then you don't need to build yourself a factory to produce one and the same thing. That you have one machine that can produce everything. Like if you have CNC, you can do small designs, but furniture, by whatever, and you can do it by piece. So it's actually changing. It's changing the scene completely. Since the CNCs are, especially in woodworking and this kind of industry, are around for a really long time. And I'm actually happy I'll mention this project about the 3D milling molds, because I was also working quite a lot with this possibility to creating the molds without the models. Because I think this is kind of like, I feel it's weird to talk about the sustainability and about the ecological crisis in combination with glass, and especially glass art, because it consumes unbelievable amounts of energy and materials. So it's, it's a little bit contradicting. So, but it's still, I think, even that, then it's consumed less time and less material in general. And there are also those small hacks. Actually, I do, in this stage of my research, I mostly make molds with the ordinary physical models, but I 3D print them. And there are those actually the little hacks would affect the process and make it faster. Because, for example, I did try a lot of different filaments, but actually I stick, I get back to PLA because it's actually worked the best. And I found out that with so simple tool as a 3D pen, what is mostly used for doodling for children, you can actually do the air vents and all the like supporting structures very easily, just draw it in the air. And it will just cast out of the rest of the model. So I think that the 3D printing is like really big thing. It's not like really visible on those images, but actually all those glass parts of my works, they are originally 3D printed in different materials. It was actually also part of the research to kind of, find out the best possible material to be used as a model instead of the wax for the mold making. But as I said, I actually, by a really weird circle, I actually get back to the PLA, what is actually like basic material, because mostly the cast out materials doesn't work really well with glass because they still have some residues and fumes and stuff. But I'm sorry, I just kind of catched in the topic a little bit.
No, it's wonderful. It's for people who don't know about these things, I'm still amazed that a 3D printer can print essentially something in glass. To me, that's incredible. I remember I was speaking to Marzena and Agnieszka earlier, and they were sort of saying, everyone has 3D printers now in the same way, and I feel very behind the times that still excites me. Like Alan buying one for Christmas, it's still a novelty to me, a 3D printer. So I feel all of you know far more about what innovations are coming, because you're eons ahead, because you're seeing these things and you're using them, all the time, which is just incredible. And
you just like really soon gonna use a similar machine to actually process your artificial protein to eat it. So I think that it's like really soon gonna touch everybody. But I just want to say like that's what I tried to point out was then I think then the 3D printing, unless it's not a new technology, it's actually have a huge impact on all of the creative industry, I think.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I'm curious, this is potentially a question for everyone now. We can kind of branch out into a more Q&A style. But I'm curious about to what extent you all think these kind of new technologies are helping or hindering the sort of traditional art of glassmaking, if we say. Do you think they're helping or hindering? Do you think they're forcing people to actually reassess what they can already do in traditional ways? Or do you think they're pushing them in different directions? Perhaps Alan, if you want to start with this, maybe.
Wait a second, there we go. Yeah, I think it's an interesting topic, and different people are going to have very different answers because it depends what role you have, like what your relationship with glass is. I think people who are glass artists, like independent glass artists making their own work with their own creative practice, I don't think it's going to have any, I speak for them. I'll say I think they might respond that it's probably not going to have much effect because when you're working directly like that, it's your voice being expressed through, you're making work which is unique. It's coming out of you, out of your experience, and out of how you interact with whatever tools you choose to. A machine or an industrialized thing can't replace an artwork. It may be able to copy or emulate what someone's done in the past, but it can't generate or anticipate what they're going to produce next. So I think for the individual, if anything, it's going to raise the value, the uniqueness, and what makes it special to have a human being creating something, putting their ideas and expressing it in a material way. I think as we have more and more technology around, the contrast which like the human expression thing will have to this onslaught of technology will make the handmade stuff more special. If you have some kind of, I'll risk saying pointless affectation for a process which is out of date, then if you refuse to modernize, you may find yourself left behind a little bit if you're in competition with other people to produce X number of pieces in X amount of time. But no, I don't feel threatened by it. I think it's an interesting challenge. It's an interesting opportunity. Take it on board where it feels appropriate. These things are just tools, and they're tools that should, you shouldn't have it just for the sake of having it. You shouldn't use any technology just for the sake of it. I think that results in derivative work and derivative practices. Take it on board where it's appropriate. Let it challenge you. Let yourself be challenged by it. But just accept it. These things are a part of life, and they bring interesting possibilities.
Sini, do you want to maybe add one or two of your own thoughts on whether technology has been kind of hindering or helping with your own practice?
I do agree with Alan that new technologies, they give so much. Also, they give the possibilities. For example, lately I have been very interested in the new 3D printing materials, for example, wood that is plastic free. So the world always goes forward. But we also, as artists, we also have the responsibility to choose what sort of items we make and what are our values. Why are those artworks important? And especially when you use the glass medium, it consumes the energy, for example. So you need to really know that the item it is for the making, and the ecological side is also important in these new innovations, I suppose.
Definitely, and I think we actually had a panel from the Conversations in Glass on sustainability earlier this week, which is wonderful and it is available for people to go and watch. Another question I have, which I would love to pose to the Faculty of Ceramics and Glass, which we have with us, Marzena and Agnieszka. I was wondering what could be next on the horizon, given that you're working with all these exciting new students and people with new ideas coming up. I was wondering what you think could be on the horizon for new ways of working with glass, or even just in terms of the relationship between glass and technology. For you, working with lots of young people and constantly with people who are innovating, what do you see as the kind of things that are going to be emerging over the next few years?
You're muted at the moment, Agnieszka.
My mistake.
There we go.
In our future. So I can say that we have all of the tools we are talking about in our university, but the most important is how the people want to use them. You know, the sad side of this is that that the people, you know, sometimes forget how to use their hand. We have such a student that they use only, you know, digital devices to make some prototypes and etc. What's very sad. And our hand is connected with our brain, so you know, I know that the practice is very important for all of us. So the future, yeah, use what we have in our university, and we will see what is going to happen in the future. We have a lot of facilities that we can, you know, play and do whatever we want. But you know, think about the matter and idea is the most important.
Yeah. Intuition, I think. We have to keep our intuition and believe in our emotion. It's important because technology without this is, I think, without sense also. So we hope that we can learn or teach our students this intuition also, how to be wrażliwym, how to keep this intuition. That's all.
How to be sensitive, she wanted to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the most important. Yeah, the tools are very helpful. So, you know, when the people know how to design and do some things, they can use them to make it faster and faster. So this is very, very useful point.
Fantastic. And Vendulka, perhaps you would like to add your thoughts.
To be honest, I have so many thoughts that this could last whole evening, but I completely agree with Agnieszka and Marzena. Then it is actually then the technology. Without, I don't want to sound pathetic, but without the soul is the industry. There still have to be the touch. And when I've been teaching on the university, where I'm actually working on my PhD, there was this really sad thing about people who's actually wasn't able to draw their own design with their hand because they get used to do everything in a 3D. So how I can believe them, they really imagine the thing before they start to do it in a computer, and it doesn't happen just, you know, accidentally. And I didn't say then this process of like going through the accidents in, I don't know, 3D software is a not good way, but it has to be intentional. It has to be something what you developing yourself, what you're actually thinking through. But I think then, you know, with those things, what are actually, you know, reaching our horizons in glass, I think then there is actually a lot of interesting tech. What's actually sitting on the bottoms of the droners? Like there was like this really big researches about the microwave, using microwave for melting glass. What is actually have much smaller, but needs much smaller. It doesn't need so much electricity. There was many things about like the glass recipes was actually melted under lower temperatures. There was like many things but actually existing. It's just really difficult to get them in practice. I think it's kind of like, you know, meddling with the first question. Then it is also about it, and I face that situation a few times in my practice. Then I went to some studios, like bigger studios, what's actually working with casting, like mostly doing design, somebody's designs, like similar as Berengo. And I said, okay, hey, I'm working on that and I need to test it somewhere. And so what about it? And we try it. And the answer was mostly like, but we're doing this since 50s. We don't need to do anything else. It works. It's cheap. It's nice. We have our results. Why did we supposed to switch to something new? And I think that it works with many things. Like then the new tech doesn't mean that the old one is wrong, and it still works. So a lot of people doesn't feel the need to change it. You have to be some kind of techno optimist, like to say, okay, I'm gonna risk like a lot of things. I'm gonna invest a lot of money to new technology, and I may find out that it's not gonna work for my practice. But still, I find that like I think then there are so many points where, because I'm a big techno optimist, so I still feel then there are this really, then there is still the important things are about the human nature, like about the if we talk about art and not about industry, I think we have to keep in our mind and it's art. It's supposed to have the human aspect in it, and also with those like the craft stuff, like. And to be open-minded, but glass is so vivid material, then there is still space for people who want to melt the glass with the wood somewhere, in the mountains and make like proper Gothic glass. And there is still space for people who do, I don't know, like 3D print the pâté de verre. So there is like it's unlimited.
It really is. And if you never try, you'll never know. Which I think is the whole point of innovation. It's having the courage to follow those ideas through and to put them in practice. So that's wonderful. I think that's a wonderful note to end on. Thank you, everyone, for such an interesting discussion. That was truly, truly wonderful. Over to you, Camilla, potentially to wrap up.
Yes, thank you so much, all of you. I realise, of course, that this was an incredibly ambitious topic to cover at short notice and in detail in the space of just 1 hour, but I think you've all done the most brilliant job. It's been, from my point of view, and I'm sure from everybody listening and who will continue to listen as we'll have this available to watch on YouTube, it's been just the most fascinating and inspiring conversation, and so impressive to hear from each of you about some of the innovations you've been pioneering in your own creative practice, but also indeed in the work of others. And you've really reminded us, if we needed reminding, about the endless possibilities and scope that this remarkable material of glass offers. It's exciting to hear about what you're doing, what your colleagues and collaborators are doing to push the boundaries continually of the medium, and to think what might be next on the horizon is also very thought-provoking. So we've been so thrilled and grateful to have you all part of the Venice Glass Week in your different capacities. And it just reminds me, hearing you all today, really how grateful and honoured, fortunate we are to have you all participating in the Glass Week. Glass artists, technicians, teachers and researchers, such as all of you. You make the festival, and you've made this festival a particularly exciting edition, and based on what you've been saying today, it makes me really look forward to what might be on the horizon for next year's edition and beyond. So first of all, I'd like to thank our sponsor Apice, represented by Fabiano today. Thank you very much, Fabiano, for joining us, but also thank you to Apice, Maurizio Torcelan, and all of your wonderful collaborators and colleagues for facilitating this great program as part of this year's edition. To everybody who's been watching at home, thank you very much for joining us, and I hope you'll continue to follow the conversations. Perhaps if you missed any, you might like to catch up on some on our YouTube channel. And finally, I'd like to thank our wonderful speakers, to Vendulka, to Agnieszka and Marzena, to Alan, Sini. We are so happy and pleased to have had you all today on our last edition of the festival. I see that it's now 6:10, which means that officially the Venice Glass Week 5th edition, Viva Vetro, is over, which is sad, but thanks to all of you. I no doubt there are exciting things in the pipeline, and we hope to welcome you all back next year. And Also, of course, to our wonderful moderator, Thea, who's done such a brilliant job of navigating this topic in such a short amount of time. Really, you've done a wonderful job, and look forward to seeing you all here, hopefully not just online, but in person next year. So thank you very much.